Hi, Taylor T. Carlson, and I'm back with another video for you. Another Star Wars comic review today. Today we're going to be taking a look at this. This is Star Wars: The Rise of Kylo Ren. It's a 4-issue miniseries that was recently combined into this trade paperback here. I did earlier reviews for the individual issues of this comic, I think all except for the first issue. I will include pertinent links above to those issues, and this review will contain spoilers. I'm not going to cover each and every individual plot point of the whole series, but I am going to give sort of an overview as well as my personal review. This comic, as the name implies, is basically the story of how Ben Solo falls to the dark side and becomes Kylo Ren, the leader of the Knights of Ren. We start out in this comic with the Knights of Ren on another world with some people that are supposedly considering joining, and of course things don't end well for them. Meanwhile, we get to the point where, as we saw in The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker had briefly considered killing Ben Solo when the dark side had risen in him. This resulted in the destruction of Luke's temple. At this point, Ben Solo flees because he needs to figure out who he is, because he's going through an identity crisis of sorts, and some of Luke's Jedi students go after him because they think they need to bring him to justice, each of them having their own share of strengths and weaknesses. He goes to Supreme Leader Snoke. Apparently their minds have been melded to some extent since Ben was young. We even see some clips of a younger Ben Solo with Lor San Tekka and Luke Skywalker going to explore some ruins, and during that time we get more of an idea of what happened back then. And Ben Solo is given a test. He has to go find the Knights of Ren, so he goes to where he and Luke had encountered them years and years ago, and that leads to him meeting up with them. And of course, he finds out that the cost of joining is pretty high in that they require a good death. And he uses his powers to help them out, and then eventually, of course, the former Jedi students catch up, and he ends up having to do battle with them, and when he manages to subdue one of the students, he's hesitant to execute said student, and Ren, who's the leader of the Knights of Ren, basically chastises Ben, claiming that he's fighting this all the way and that they thought he was better than this despite his ability. Finally, Ben Solo just snaps. He's tired of having been claimed his whole life by both the light and the dark, so he turns, he does battle with Ren, eventually managing to kill him, as well as finishing off the former Jedi students. At this point, he declares himself the leader of the Knights of Ren, with the fellow knights bowing down to him. He takes a crystal, makes it bleed, puts it into his lightsaber, which is now red with the bleeding kyber crystal, and he sees Snoke's vision in his head saying, "What is your name?" And at this point, he officially becomes Kylo Ren. Ben Solo, or Kylo Ren, is easily one of the most compelling characters in the Star Wars sequel trilogy. However, we don't really learn anything about the Knights of Ren in the movie. In the first 2 installments of the sequel trilogy, they really only show up in flashbacks, and they only make a physical appearance in The Rise of Skywalker, and even then, it's fairly brief. It's great to finally get backstory on this group, as well as seeing Ben's inner turmoil and how he eventually does turn over to the dark side with all that's going on. This comic was written by Charles Soule. That's a name that's going to come up a lot in my reviews, but this guy is easily one of my favorite, if not my overall favorite, Marvel Star Wars comics writers. He's worked on several series, and he has a way of blending together the different eras of canon, including what he's put in his comics. Like, there's a reference to Jocasta Nu, the old Jedi librarian, and a cache of Jedi artifacts she'd put away that Luke used when he was putting his school together. And Lor San Tekka, great to see him again. He's the character that was played by the late, great Max von Sydow in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, who of course is promptly killed by Kylo Ren early in the film. And he makes a reference to the High Republic era, which is a new era we're going to be exploring in canon starting next year, set about 200 years prior to The Phantom Menace. We get a lot of interesting references and plot points throughout this comic. Honestly, from the beginning, you have a pretty good idea of how things are going to go for Luke's former Jedi students when they give chase and refuse to give Ben the space that he needs. And Ben's turn to the dark side is not entirely unsympathetic. You actually sort of side with him in a way based on all the things that have happened to him over the course of his life. And of course the outcome here does not disappoint. We even see Snoke and the revived Emperor Palpatine cheering him on from the shadows, pushing him toward the darkness. One of the biggest complaints I had about the Allegiance comic that was supposed to be a prequel to Rise of Skywalker was that it had nothing to do with Palpatine's re-rise and rebirth whatsoever, but here they at least give him a cameo that sort of makes sense. Overall, this is, in my opinion, one of the best comics that's been released in Marvel's new Star Wars comic canon. Have you had a chance to pick up The Rise of Kylo Ren yet? Is it one of your favorite Star Wars comics too? Were you not a fan? Comment down below and let me know what you think. Also remember to subscribe to this channel for more content and like this video if you found it helpful. I'm Taylor T. Carlson and I'll be seeing you in my next Star Wars comic review.